behind closed doors. I'm a fool for your love.
Everyone, my name is Anthony. I'm back here on Sports Fan Entertainment. It's the Anthony James Show. Once again, I'm talking about an NFL division. Today, I put these teams these divisions into a random list. Came out with the NFC West. So we're talking about the NFC West today, and how the turntables, because this division went from being. People were talking, remember a few years ago we were hearing talks of, can all four of these teams have at least a 500 record, if not winning record? We came close. The Rams had to screw it up, but the Cardinals and Seahawks had a winning record, and the 49ers went 8-8. But now I look at this division, you have three teams that aren't that good, and then you have a team that's a playoff team, but that's about it. So let's get into it. Let's start out with the Los Angeles Rams. Now the Rams... let's talk about it this way. If the Rams do well this season, Jared Goff. That's why they did well. If the Rams do poor this season, Jared Goff had to do with it. He might not be the only reason, but he had to do with it. I do like their new head coach, Sean McVay. I think that's a good move. Look at it this way. He's 31 years old. That is so young. Look at Bill Belichick. He's in his 60s. I doubt this will happen. But if he ends up being a top 5 NFL head coach, you could see him be the Rams coach for the next 20, 30 years. Like I said, I don't think that will happen, but wouldn't that be amazing? You could potentially see having 2 franchise quarterbacks for Sean McVay. If Jared Goff pans out, or if they get somebody else after a couple years, and then whoever that next guy is. Of course, this is the hypothetical scenario, but that's really neat. We'll see if it actually happens. Like I said, I don't think it will. But I do like this addition of Sean McVay. They went out, they signed a solid left tackle, Andrew Whitworth. He won't last long. You only got 2 years with him, and you'll be lucky if you get more out of him. I doubt you will. You got 2 years, though. It's a nice band-aid on that offensive line. Along with the Seahawks and the Vikings, it was one of the worst offensive lines in football last year. So it's nice for the Rams to start seeing it improve. Because when you have a young quarterback like Jared Goff, you need to build around him. And that's what they did. They spent high picks on offensive players. Their first 2 picks, tight end, wide receiver. They want to get more players for Jared Goff. I was kind of disappointed with their offseason. They decided to, in this regard, because they decided to go with they decided to go with a different wide receiver. They went with Robert Woods. I don't really like that. They had Kenny Britt. He looked to be a good wide receiver for them. We'll see how that works out, but I was kind of surprised and disappointed that they went with them. Overall, what would I say right now? My prediction would be, why not give them another 7-9? I don't know if they will reach that, but I think they have enough talent, and I think they have a better head coach where they can do better record-wise. This division, I can see them pulling out wins against the 49ers, even though they did not do that last year. I mean, 3-3, I don't think that's impossible to say they go that in the division. They usually find a way to beat the Seahawks. So if you can just sweep either the Cardinals or the 49ers, which I don't think is impossible, the Rams could have a decent record. It won't be a playoff team, but they could have a decent record. So next up, the 49ers. They actually had an offseason. It was kind of like the Rams, where there were some moves I really liked, and there are other moves where I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. Let's see. Kyle Shanahan. I really like that move. I'm surprised it took this long for Kyle Shanahan to be a head coach, but the 49ers got a good coach in him. I'm excited about his future in the NFL. They got rid of their GM. Thank the Lord, right? They finally got rid of their GM. And the funny thing is, like, they were the only team where I'm like, they picked a good time to fire their GM. Because I thought the Colts waited a bit to fire their GM. I thought the Redskins waited a bit to fire their GM. I thought the Bills waited a bit to fire their GM. And I thought the Chiefs waited a bit to fire their GM. Realistically, I kind of understand the Colts because you still had a decent offseason, but you lost about a month that you could have had if you did that a month ago. And the Bills, they at least waited till after the draft. Redskins, they were kind of forced into it. But again, that's beside the point. I just like they did it. They have a good GM. Ballard has done a really good job thus far. And I think you have a good GM head coach combo. Hopefully they work well together. Remember Jim Harbaugh, he did not work well together. So we'll see. I think they have a good building block here. They had a good draft off-season wise. They made some moves. I like their off-season. But we're talking about the number 2 overall pick team. It's not like this team's going to make this giant leap. It's going to take a year or two to really make this team back into the contender it was under Jim Harbaugh. And, well, let's start with the quarterbacks, because the quarterback situation, that's pretty poor. You go from having the number 2 overall picks quarterback to the number 3 overall picks quarterback. You take the Bears quarterbacks. The Bears. Matt Barkley, Brian Hoyer. I mean, Brian Hoyer is a solid enough quarterback, but still, I'm not excited about that season under them. They used their 3rd round pick on an Iowa quarterback. I love that. However, that's not the quarterback. I don't think that was the right time. It's kind of like last year the Browns did the same thing. Drafted a quarterback in round 3 that I thought you could have got later or really didn't need. Because, let's be honest, do you think he's your franchise quarterback? No. You'll probably draft a franchise quarterback next year, right? You're still going to get a top 10 pick, which is fine. You're rebuilding. But Kyle Shanahan, I think he's going to do a good job. I'm excited if I'm a 49ers fan. Now let's talk about, of the 4 teams, I'm probably the most disappointed this offseason with the Cardinals. Because I'm not a big Seahawks fan. We'll get to that in a second with their offseason. But at least they're a playoff team. I can't see the Cardinals being a playoff team. They had a draft that was pretty poor. And beyond that, they messed up because they could have got a quarterback, but they decided not to. Why not Patrick Mahomes? Why not? Why? Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. Honestly, I'm not a big Deshaun Watson fan. I had him as a 2nd round talent. He went much higher than the 2nd round. So I understand that, but Patrick Mahomes, high risk, high reward, I do understand that, but Carson Palmer's so old. Like, how much longer are you expecting Carson Palmer to be a franchise quarterback? Because I'm not expecting him much longer. And to me, Carson Palmer's just going to get worse. A year ago, he was coming off his best season of his career. I said the Cardinals could not have another great year like that from Carson Palmer, and they didn't. I've been right about the Cardinals for a while now. A year ago, I had them winning the Super Bowl. Obviously, they didn't, but guess what they did? They made the NFC Championship. They came pretty darn close. I also had them winning the division, which they also did. Last year, I did not have them winning the division. I had them as a wild card team, but I didn't have them winning the division, and they didn't win the division. They're looking like a poor team, and I'm expecting them to do that again this year. Bruce Arians, good coach, good defense. But offense, you're also going to talk about Larry Fitzgerald, who's going to take another step down because he's getting older. He's still a good wide receiver, but how much longer are you expecting Larry Fitzgerald to be a good wide receiver? And after that, see, they have good depth, but they don't have anybody that's like, look at the Denver Broncos. You have 2 wide receivers that I think on a lot of other teams would be their number 1. But depth-wise, there's not really anything there. With the Cardinals, they have Larry Fitzgerald, which is the number 1. But after him, pretty much all those wide receivers who will be on the roster this year, I could see being 3 and 4 wide receivers for many teams, but I don't have any wide receiver I could see being a number 2 or a number 1 complement to Larry Fitzgerald. That's going to hurt. Yes, you have a great running game, but the offensive line starting to not do so well. Not the worst in the division, but still not that great. So I look at the Cardinals. Cardinal fans, I wouldn't be expecting a lot this year. If I had to put a record on you, 5-6 wins? Maybe 7? Probably the same for the 49ers too. Sorry, Cardinal fans, but you need to find a quarterback. Until you do, then who cares? Sorry. And then finally, the Seahawks. The Seahawks, they're going to be a playoff team. I'd be surprised if they're not, because they have a top 5 quarterback in Russell Wilson. But after that, you have a defense that's still pretty good, probably top 10, right? But it's not like it was when they won the Super Bowl, or when they went to the Super Bowls. It's just not that way anymore. It's still a good defense, but what else is there? It's a good defense. Offensively, they decided to bring in all these running backs. You bring in Eddie Lacy. You've drafted multiple. You have Thomas Rawls, C.J. Prosise, Eddie Lacy. You have all these running backs. but you don't have a running back. Marshawn Lynch is gone. You at least got something for him, but he's gone. So now what? Now you got to find a replacement for him. I don't think Eddie Lacy's that. I like the pickup of Eddie Lacy, let me say that, but I don't think he's that long-term replacement. Hopefully it's CJ Prosise or Thomas Rawls for you guys. I think it can be. But I just don't understand bringing in all these running backs. We'll see how that works out. But it'd be nice to have just one guy who can do it all. And we thought it was Thomas Rawls, but apparently they don't. That's fine. He's been hurt. I understand. But offensive line, like I mentioned, one of the worst offensive lines last year. And, you know, the Vikings, the Rams, they go out, they sign big-name players to build that offensive line. Vikings are probably, hopefully, average. Rams, they get a star left tackle. What did the Seahawks do? They signed a former number 2 overall bust. The Jacksonville Jaguars didn't want him, and Luke Joeckel. That was their big offensive lineman move. Ugh. I don't like that, and I think the Seahawks will witness that very, very soon. What disappoints me about the Seahawks and what make me mad if I'm a Seahawks fan is since 2012 they've had 1 first-round draft pick. If you want to include Percy Harvin, sure, 2. But 2012, that's a long time to go with only 1 first-round draft pick. Like this year, they've had 6 in round 2 and 3. They had 6 picks. But the way the Seahawks go is every year they go with the draft, they rather go with quantity over quality. I'm not saying that all these picks are bad. I'm sure at least 2 or 3 of those first 6 picks will be good. I wouldn't be surprised. However, you're not getting that top talent. You're not willing to trade up in the first round and acquire a player you need. To me, I like the idea of a quantity. I like multiple draft picks. The Vikings had 11 this year. I love seeing my team bring in a lot of players. However, they were also willing to trade up and acquire draft picks too. The Seahawks weren't. They weren't willing to trade up in the first round and acquire someone. I'm not saying they have to do that just to do it, but to do it every year where you get quantity over quality, it kind of hurts. And you're starting to see it. Like, look at last year. They didn't make it past the divisional round, and I have a feeling that's the farthest they'll get if they make it out of the wild card this year. I'm not high on the Seahawks, and it's kind of disappointing because a year ago, I ended up having the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. That was my prediction. And of course it didn't happen, and looking at it right now, I don't know if it'll happen for a while. A playoff team, but playoffs don't matter if you don't win the big one, right? So, we'll see how they do. You at least have your franchise quarterback. That's more than I can say for the other 3 teams right now. And really, for that reason and the fact you have arguably the number 2 coach in the NFL, I'd say he is, and Pete Carroll, it's hard not to say that the Seahawks won't win the division. 10-6, maybe 11-5. I think that's about where they're standing. But tell me what you think about the NFC West in the comments below. Do you agree, disagree? I'd love to hear your opinions. If you're new, you can follow me at Twitter at AnthonyJamesTV, link in description. I have my own channel, Anthony James TV, where I make NFL videos there too. And NBA, I've been doing some NBA too. So go there, you can subscribe for more content from me there. Thank you for watching today's video, and until next time, this is Anthony, I'm out. See you all later.
Closed doors, I'm a fool for you.